All right, friends, today we're going to be talking about all things meetings, collective grown, right? And specifically, I want to tell you about the time I helped a company realize that they were paying people to sit in rooms and talk. In fact, over 40% of their salary budget was being spent in meeting time, not product development, not customer service, meetings. And honestly, most of them didn't even need to happen. Today, we're going to be breaking down the 5 rules that I believe everyone should abide by when it comes to dealing with meetings. All right, so before we dive in, if you know someone or you yourself work in an environment that is very meeting heavy, this is going to be a fantastic episode, and I encourage you to share it with a friend that may benefit from this as well. Now, years ago, before starting the Pink Bee, I was doing some consulting work, quite a bit of it, and there was a specific organization that had just crossed over that 100 employee benchmark. So they were kind of, starting to get a little bit more of out of that really, really small operating business into a larger one. And I was brought in to discuss operational efficiencies. And I kicked things off by doing an exercise that absolutely ended up shocking all of the executives in the organization. I went through behind the scenes and added up the hours spent in recurring meetings. So I'm not even talking one-offs, the standard recurring meetings, the team meetings, the weekly stand-ups, in some cases the daily stand-ups, the monthly, cross-organizational meetings, so on and so forth, and went through adding up the actual people, looking at the people that were in each of those recurring meetings, and then went the final step of calculating, factoring in the salaries of each of those individuals. From there, we were actually able to calculate how much of that organizational's salary budget was being spent by people sitting in meetings. And in this organization, they uncovered that over 40%, friends, 40% of all of the expenses that were going towards salary was going towards people sitting in a room having meetings. Let that sink in for a second. Almost half of what they were paying people for, their time for, was spent in conference rooms. And this was pre-Zoom days. Now, meetings are even easier with Zoom, right? And I really don't think that number is that far off of a lot of organizations out there. Now, here's the interesting part. When we really dug into the meat of those meetings, we were able to realize that 2 things. Number 1, a lot of the meetings did not need to be happening at the schedule at which they were. And number 2, a lot of the people sitting in the meeting really didn't need to be there. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking you spend your life in meetings, you're like, yeah, this sounds about right, Megan. Whether you are a person who schedules a lot of meetings or you're the one who's drowning in attending all of the meetings, this episode is 100% for you. Because meetings aren't just annoying, right? They're expensive, they're exhausting, and most of the time they're avoidable. Before we dive into the 5 meeting rules, I think it's important to understand that the expense of meetings is not equal for everyone in an organization. And what I'm referring to here is the actual impact on productivity. And I think that this message really hits home well when you look at Paul Graham's insights about this idea of a manager's schedule versus a maker's schedule. Here's ultimately what we're kind of talking about here is if you are a manager, right, your workday looks very different than if you are what he is referring to as a maker, right? The person who is designing, delivering, creating the work. So I worked with a lot of software organizations. Okay. So I'm just going to use that as an example. Maybe you are a manager in a software organization, meaning you're not actually building the software. Managers' days tend to flow in 1 hour's blocks, and meetings fit naturally in those blocks. So the impact to productivity oftentimes isn't as high. Whereas if you are the person who is, at your computer doing that creative work, designing, building, testing, et cetera, you are the maker. You need longer stretches of uninterrupted time to really get into flow. If you are a maker, having your day broken up often, where you're having to jump in and out of meetings, the impact to your productivity is significantly higher than the impact of productivity if you are a manager. So oftentimes the people scheduling the meetings are the managers. And so they're not recognizing the cost in terms of productivity that just having meetings pop up randomly throughout the day that they're pulling the makers into. They're not recognizing, seeing, or understanding that they are completely derailing somebody's productivity for the day. And that's a whole second cost to be thinking about. It's not just calculating what their salary is and how many hours of their week they're sitting in a room in meetings. But what you're not seeing is that you are directly draining productivity if you're not thinking about the right approach to how you plan for, how you hold meetings, and how you decide who actually needs to be in the room. Now, what was fascinating is this organization that I worked with, when they saw how much money they were spending on meetings, they put two things in place very quickly. Number one was reducing the frequency of some meetings. That's a quick win, right? Maybe you're doing something every week that you realize does not need to be done weekly. So if you're reducing the number of meetings, that's an easy way to start getting some of that cost back. But then also recognizing, well, two things: running a more efficient meeting, which we're going to talk about. But then secondly, does everybody actually need to be in the room? Like the two easy fixes are less meetings and less number of bodies in the room. So let's think about this. Everybody knows, I mean, nobody loves meetings. Well, some people do, let's be frank. But if meetings are, we know, this expensive and this disruptive to our productivity, why do we keep having so many of them? And more importantly, what can we put in place so that the meetings are not such a financial and a productivity drain? So I want to talk about kind of the five key rules that I believe every organization should have in place that will help make sure that they're not spending all their time and their productivity in meetings. So, rule number one is, and this is, again, this is more of a personal opinion, but it is backed on a lot of research and a lot of being in companies as well. I personally believe that organizations should avoid first thing Monday morning meetings at all costs. And I'm going to tell you why. Most employees, most people, when they are step into Monday morning, come in with one of two types of energy on a Monday morning. There are the people that come in with ready to conquer the world Monday morning energy. Like this is when their productivity is at its highest. They've been rested over the weekend. They are ready to hit the ground running. And when you shove them into a conference room, very first thing on a Monday morning, you are missing the opportunity to capitalize on the best energy and in some cases the highest productivity from those workers. Now, other people come in with the kind of the weekend hangover, not literally, but figuratively. Maybe, they don't love their work. They're just like, ugh, Mondays are hard. And they're coming in with that, please, like, nobody speak to me until I've had a few more cups of coffee. And they kind of need to slow roll their way into work for the week. If you are bringing those people into a meeting and you need them to really be thinking strategically, providing valuable insights, etc., you're not getting them where their brain power is at a good spot. And so I just always encourage organizations, like, don't have meetings before, say, 11 a.m. on a Monday. Let everybody come in and capitalize on the start of their week, regardless of where they sit on that spectrum, in a way that's actually going to serve your organization the best. So that's rule number one. Now, rule number two, I just think, is common courtesy. And this isn't so much from a productivity perspective. In some ways it is, but don't have meetings on Friday afternoons. Just don't do it. Nobody wants to be there. They're staring at the clock, counting down when they're ready to leave for the weekend. Their brain is not in the room with you, and they are tired, right? And not to mention, they are going to resent being in there. especially to the person who schedules the 4 o'clock Friday afternoon meeting, you need to recognize nobody likes you. All right. When you do that, nobody likes you. And with a very low level of planning, you can absolutely plan a week that gets you the information that you need before 4 p.m. on a Friday. Okay. When I see people scheduling last minute Friday afternoon meetings, the energy I see there is usually one of people thinking, okay, your lack of planning is now becoming my Friday afternoon emergency. All right. So if you find that you're constantly scheduling late afternoon Friday meetings, that may be a sign that you're not doing a great job planning ahead. And now you're putting all of that responsibility on your coworkers, your team, et cetera. So those are two, I believe, very easy rules to follow. Avoid Monday morning, and please do not schedule the Friday afternoon meeting. So now let's talk about the final three, which are really now the strategy part, the meaty part of how to make sure that you're not wasting time in meetings. So rule number 3, there is no reason why when a meeting is scheduled that it should not have a clear agenda, and that agenda should be set ahead of time. Now, what do I mean by a clear agenda? Because some people are like, oh, yeah, here, we're going to meet to discuss this project. An agenda that says discuss a project, that is not an agenda. All right. An agenda means that at the end of the meeting, there is a desired outcome. So you are holding this meeting for a specific purpose. And then the agenda should show here are the key points of things that we need to discuss in order to hit the desired outcome. If you are scheduling a meeting to, quote, discuss something or to get, quote, a project update, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what's the desired outcome? Is there data you're looking for? Is there a decision that needs to be made? Is there a place where people are feeling stuck and the purpose of the meeting is to solve this problem or unravel this thing that is causing, miscommunication or people not being able to move forward? All right. So understanding that if you are scheduling a meeting, and I've seen this put into organizations that have said, if you are invited to a meeting where there is no clear purpose of it, like the person who scheduled the meeting has not said, this is the desired outcome and here's the agenda, I have seen organizations say, you do not have to go. Because there is no bigger waste of time than people gathering to have a meeting where there is not a desired, clear outcome for it. All right. So if you have been invited to a meeting without a clear outcome, absolutely. Anytime people will do this all the time. Hey, Megan, I'd love to have a meeting with you. Let's have a coffee chat. I get invited to, quote, coffee chats all the time. I will never say yes to a random coffee chat. I'm always asking, what is the desired outcome of this meeting? What is our clear purpose? And if there is one, and that purpose aligns with what I'm doing, fantastic. If not, I am not going to spend my time or my energy there. And this can apply in a corporate setting as well, especially in a corporate setting. So that's rule number 3. All meetings should have a clearly listed desired outcome, and then ideally the steps of the agenda that are going to help do that. Because if you're the one scheduling the meeting, when you take the time to think that through ahead of time, I promise you this, your meetings will run much smoother. Now, rule number 4, and this is one where people get emotional. Stop inviting people to meetings that don't need to be there. Let's dive into this idea of who needs to be in a meeting. Only the people required to be in the room that support getting to the desired outcome need to be in the meeting. The consumer of the information does not need to be in the meeting. I repeat, decision makers, the ones that have the innate knowledge and are the ones that are empowered to make the decisions in support of the desired outcome, they are the ones that need to be in the meeting. Consumers of the actual outcome, the ones who need to know about the answers that were put together in the meeting, do not need to be sitting in the room. But here's what happens. We start to fall into a trap of people thinking that if they're not being invited to a meeting, that they are not a valued employee or a valued worker. I want to invite you to reframe this. Being excluded from a meeting is a total gift to you of your time. And this is a fundamental shift that organizations need to make. And here's a key reason why a lot of time the people that are just the consumers of the information end up sitting in meetings. They end up being in the meeting because their organization does not have a clear way of communicating the outcomes of the meetings. So people will fight to get in that room because they're like, I need to know about the information that's being discussed here. And they have no other way of getting it. So meetings start getting bigger and bigger and bigger because the consumers of the information are banging down the door to be in the meeting because to them, that's the only way they're getting the output of the meeting. So if this is you, two fundamental things need to shift. Number one, you need to make sure you have clear communication of this is how the outcome of this meeting will be communicated to those of you that need to have it. And then there needs to be a kind of rewiring of your brain and understanding that not being invited to a meeting does not mean you are not a valued employee. It just means that you are not a decision maker that needs to be there for that specific meeting, for the desired outcome of that meeting. All you need to be is the one that is receiving the information. All right. But again, if you don't have clear communication paths, this is often why the number of people in a room gets out of control. It's because they're like, this is the only way I can get the information that I need. So that, friends, is rule number 4. That one is gold. Stop inviting people who don't need to be there. And if they're there to get the information, fix that problem. Don't fix it by having 10 other people sitting in a meeting. Rule number 5, I think all organizations should embrace this, and it is similar to let's avoid Monday morning and avoid Friday afternoon meetings. But I also believe, especially if you are in an organization where there are a lot of that maker mentality, you are creating things. A significant people working there are creating and building things. I really encourage organizations to establish agreed upon meeting-free blocks of time. So this might say, hey, guess what? As an organization, we don't have any meetings on Wednesday mornings. Like, we're not going to meet the first 2 hours of Monday. Don't worry, we're not scheduling 4 p.m. Friday meetings. But we as an organization are embracing the fact that Wednesday mornings or even all day Wednesdays are meeting-free days. That allows for everyone in the organization to have an entire day, if you can, if not a half day, where they know they can really get into flow. This gives everybody large pockets of time to do the job that you hired them to do, right? When you're interviewing people, you're not interviewing them to say, hey, I would love to hire you to come spend 50% of your time in a meeting. No, you're hiring them to do a job. So you need to make sure that your organization has calendars and policies in place that allows them to actually do the job that you have hired them to do. So again, it could just be, hey, Tuesday, Thursday afternoons after 3 is meeting free time, or maybe Wednesdays before lunch meeting. Again, any organization can put something in place, but it shows everybody in the organization the value that is placed in having the opportunity to get into flow state, to have times to be working on the tasks that are being assigned to them as an output likely of many of those meetings. In summary here, let's talk first about the meeting schedulers and then those of you that are being invited to meetings. If you are a meeting scheduler, okay, guys, meetings are unavoidable. We even have meetings here at the Pink Bee. But if you're a meeting scheduler, before you schedule your next meeting, I want you to ask yourself, what is the specific outcome of this? Write it down. If you can't articulate it clearly, you are not ready to have the meeting. Then think about who are the key decision makers that need to be in the room for this, right? Who do I need input from? And then everybody else can be told about the outcome afterwards. Okay. And please avoid the 8:30 or 9 a.m. Monday meeting, and don't schedule it at 4 p.m. Right. And then within an organization, you can work together to try and establish meeting free blocks if at all possible. Now, for those of you that get invited to a lot of meetings, if you are invited to a meeting and you are unclear what the desired outcome of it is, reply back and ask. You don't just have to knee jerk accept and show up. And this can be done very respectfully, very professionally. Hey, I'm working on a project right now. I see you are inviting me to this meeting. I want to make sure that I am coming prepared for this. What's the desired outcome of this meeting? Okay, because it may be that you're just a consumer of the information. You're not a decision maker. So you can say, hey, you know what? I don't actually need to be there for the conversation. I just need to have someone like fill me in afterwards. Okay, so if your organization isn't putting this in place, you can, as the meeting attendee, start very respectfully and professionally pushing back a little bit. Make sure that the meeting is not a waste of your time. And if someone replies back and says, oh, we need to discuss this project, great. What specifically are we discussing so that I make sure I show up prepared, right? And you can start pushing back on some meetings as well. So again, if you are someone that is in a very meeting heavy organization, feel free to share this episode out. Sometimes people just need to hear an outside perspective from others in this space. Now, remember about that company I told you about at the beginning, all right? When they saw that 40% of their salary pay was sitting there going to meetings, first they were like, oh my goodness, but they immediately got intentional and said, this needs to change. They looked at their meeting culture and they started asking better questions. And their target goal was to get that number down to 20% or less. Okay. And when they were very strategic about that, again, two key things happened right away. Number one, they found a lot of their meetings did not need to be happening at the occurrence they were having. They could happen less frequently. And they really discovered quickly that they had a lot of people in the room that did not need to be there. Those were the first two big wins. Then this organization put into place something I loved, which is above every conference room, they put a big sign that said, if you are walking into a meeting where you were not given an agenda with a desired outcome, please feel free to go back to your desk and get back to work. So this was something they embraced as an organization. So friends, we have to have meetings. They are unavoidable, but they don't have to always be bad. It's the unintentional ones where you aren't getting anywhere, right? And you're thinking, why am I even sitting in the room? Those are the ones that are killing your productivity, your energy, and honestly, it's hurting you and your company's bottom line. So it's time to get intentional about our meetings. Now, if you listen to this, and you're like, hey, Megan, I'm not in a corporate environment today, right? Chances are you're involved in meetings somewhere, whether it's a volunteer organization at your kid's school. Sometimes it's even just your family sitting down to talk about something. These strategies 100% apply there as well. I hope you have a great rest of your week. I hope it is not jammed full of meetings that you feel are wasting your time, and I'll see you back here next week.